friends, and many people have been with us on previous occasions for a workshop, for a webinar. As you are aware, the Early Childhood Educators Zone started when the lockdown happened, with the idea of having a platform where we could share common issues and help each other during these difficult and uncertain times. At that time, before we even knew what hit us, we had to dive in and hopefully manage to swim. And then whenever possible, we tweaked our style and improved our online teaching strategies. We have all struggled, and we ourselves really know how, and we've done a good job of it. Dialogues with our colleagues have certainly helped us to improve. Now the lockdown is being lifted phase-wise from one industry to another and at a different pace in each state. We know that at some stage schools will reopen. For our preschools, the youngest children, we have no idea when, but it will happen. However, this time we have the time to think, discuss, weigh the pros and cons, understand, visualize and analyze the situation that we are going to be in, and we can see it from several perspectives and understand every stakeholder's concerns and viewpoints. So Resonances felt that we should probably do this together and have a group that can really think about it more deeply. We can certainly learn from each other. Our speaker today is Ishita Verma, who has devoted the last 16 years to the Saint Kabir Fraternity of Schools in Vadodara and helped to revamp the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment and admin system for the pre-primary and the upper primary levels. She has been involved in teacher training in her own school as well as for Gyan Sarovar Group. She is currently an independent consultant.
Mute kar diya, maine mute kar diya.
And she is the right person to be sharing her insights regarding the reopening of schools, since she has been keenly updating herself with the guidelines on reopening of schools and also NEP, that is the National Education Policy curriculum, and specifically for the foundation years. She has been brainstorming with like-minded people and designed practical pathways for the school community regarding both these. In short, she has done her homework. So much homework that we felt that we should increase the time from 1 hour to 1.5 hours. The presentation content is so useful that we have requested Ishita to create a handout of the same for all of us so that you can study and refer to it at a later date. So don't get bogged down trying to take notes, listen to her. Do put down questions though that come to your mind, and we will take those up at the end of the session. So over to you, Ishita. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. That's that's one of the finest introductions I've heard about myself, and I don't know whether I really deserve it, but thank you anyway. A very, very good morning to everyone, a very warm welcome, and I'm so happy that you could be with us on a Saturday morning and spend an hour and a half. So the topic says rethinking schooling, and we thought maybe we should just go back and visit what exactly is schooling. So if we know what schooling is, then we can talk about rethinking schooling. So by definition, schooling is supposed to be a formal education. It's a form of education where students are taught in a classroom based on academic and co-curriculum. Although one can say that one can be educated even without schooling. So both should be acquiring a body of knowledge. So if I say that he's getting an education or she's being schooled, both are receiving knowledge. Traditionally, of course, schooling is done in a school, which is a physical structure, which actually allows the the opportunities for the education or the build-up of knowledge. But schooling is also associated with what is the quality that a particular institution is offering. Education can happen anywhere. It is not restricted to a locale, a location, or a building. And education always has a notion of being something a little deeper. And then, of course, there is homeschooling, which has become a very popular thing with a lot of parents these days, where it is it's time flexible, it is home based, it is informal, and it is also adaptive, because you don't expose the child to only what is being done generically for a whole class, but you allow the child to actually move ahead. So the purpose of why we are here today is what I'm going to be talking about. So we all know why we have to rethink schooling today. Pre 24th March, we were all very happy, balanced, sort of
Ishita,
comfortable in our zone. And then,
Ishita,
yes,
sorry, Ishita, 1 second. There's something going off with the presentation. I think you need to restart it. There's like black patches coming on it.
oh, okay, let me just see. Let me remove this. Is it still there? Okay, let me start. Is this better?
It's
Yeah,
fine
better.
at my end. It's
Okay.
fine at my end. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so we came up with the challenge, and we know what that wonderfully beautiful round structure looks like, which is also very dangerous. And it is going to be here for a while, and we don't know till how long. Vaccines haven't come out yet, and we don't know how we are going to be able to cope with it. Today, our life is on edge because that beautiful, comfortable, balanced, system of is now completely at a precarious position because we don't know how to go ahead. What tomorrow looks like, you and I don't have to get ready. And the secret of it adapting this change is to focus all our energy on not thinking about what we did in the past, but on how we are going to build the new. So let's first take a look at who are the stakeholders that get involved in schooling. The very first one, of course, is at the center is the student, because the student has learning, socialization, physical development, life skills, and so many other aspects which are part of the holistic development. We also have the parents who support the learning in whatever way they have a faith in the school that they have chosen. They are managing the school schedule within their own life schedules. They remain updated with the child and the school's events and progress. And of course, they are balancing life in their own way. The third stakeholder is the teacher. The teachers, many of them are all of what is given in role number 2 as a parent. And in addition, they also have the role of being an academician. So they are doing planning and standards and pedagogy and strategies. They are also working on how to bond with their students, how to do assessment, inclusion, a very big step that has happened now, which is really wonderful. And of course, there is always that administrative and archiving and documentation work that they have to do. Then we have the school management. And with the school management, they are the ones who provide the physical space that actually orchestrates the learning. They also look at the quality and the standards of education that the school is giving out, because that's how the popularity comes, and by word of mouth, more children come to that school. They look after staff welfare, they look after safety and cleanliness, promos and social media, and of course, they have plans for expansion. And finally, we have the allied services, which is the state government norms, the allied boards to which the school is affiliated, administration work, transportation, meals, outdoor activities, post-school hour activities, third-party agencies, and a whole lot of other people. So these are essentially the 5 stakeholders that are involved in schooling. In the old way, we can see this is what the picture was pre-March, and we find that the ethos of schooling was actually designed to bring people closer. Wherever you see, there were pockets where we are a social human being. I mean, humans are social beings. So we always collected in groups because we found comfort in learning and doing things together. However, in the recent way, which is what we see now, the school buildings are shut. They are empty. They don't have the lovely gurgling laughter and the noise, the healthy noise of a school. The building is absolutely dead, but schooling is on. And schooling is on through technology, which we have all embraced in probably what would normally have taken maybe 5 to 6 years. It's got accentuated and accelerated into something for which teachers have been highly appreciated, because you jumped into the bandwagon and you just embraced technology and you made sure learning gaps were not there. So hats off to all of you teachers for doing such a wonderful job. We've ensured that learning continued. So these are some of the ways in which the learning is happening. It's informal in some cases. Some schools also choose to have the children in a uniform because they feel the child will feel as though the child is part of the school. We can also see the various postures and locations in the house where the learning is happening. Some are guided by parents. The teacher is putting in her level best to be as creative, as innovative, and as exciting to the students as possible. But if we talk about the ethos of the old schooling, which brought us closer, right now the recent way is with a lot of distancing, which is alien to us as human beings. Now, what is the impact then on the same set of stakeholders? The child is stuck at home. There is limited socialization. There is limited outdoors. Technology is a huge barrier and a challenge. And what about the emotions? We have forgotten about what it can do to the child's emotions because they are so innocent and they are so beautiful. I mean, the souls are so beautiful, and yet they haven't seen what the world can be like. And of course, there is a huge question about whether the learning efficacy is really there or not. Some parents are very happy. Some parents have doubts. मेरे बच्चे को तो समझ में नहीं आता है, पता नहीं ये क्या कर रहे हैं. So the picture is varied and there are many colors and hues about how this new technique has been seen. Parents also felt the pressure. The impact was huge on them. Now 24/7, they have kids at home. They are were with kids at home, which also rubbed a little bit on the nerves, which normally didn't happen because kids were away for 4 to 6 hours of the day. Technology challenges, suddenly everyone in the house wanted devices. They didn't have them, they had to arrange for them, they had to pay for the internet, they had to ensure the bandwidth was good enough. Then events and projects which were given by the school, now the mothers and fathers had to be wholly dependent on in arranging for them and helping the child with it, because otherwise projects were being done in school. Their own jobs, gradually with the various phases of unlockdown, we are on unlockdown 5.0 now, some of the parents have had to go back to work. So how do you balance that? My kids got to do an online class, I am away, what is my kid going to do with the internet? I don't know. Lot of anxiety, lot of stress. Of course, the maids disappeared. We all have issues with maids and we love them, but they weren't there. And some of us actually chose to keep them away. So the home chores were humongous. We had just so much we had to cope with. And of course, some of us also have ailing and aged parents at home. So teachers, again, the same way, role number 2, plus all this. They were also stuck at home. They had to embrace technology, and I've already appreciated you all. Wonderful job. They had to actually redefine the curriculum. What they were comfortable with in the classroom would not work right now. We cannot use the same techniques. Teachers had to suddenly adapt, change, and think of what are the ways in which we can transfer this learning through an online curriculum. They had to be very innovative in that. And of course, there was a pressure on devices in their homes as well, because they were teachers, they needed a device. Some of them had children who were students, they needed a device. The husband needed a device. So that was an additional burden. And of course, the capacity building continued for teachers. So the school managements told them, you have to attend this webinar, that teacher training workshop. So apart from the schooling hours in the morning between 3 and 7, there were a host of webinars that teachers were expected to attend. So yes, it was a severe impact on their lives. School management also felt the pressure. Fees had stopped coming. Some of them were deferred, some of them were delayed, some of them were defaulters. And now, with what the state government has given a ruling just a couple of days ago, each state, because education comes in the concurrent list with our constitution, each state has been asked to decide with their state education departments what is the waiver in the fee that they are allowed to give. And I'm not quite sure about Maharashtra, but I can tell you that in Gujarat, they're looking at putting a 25% waiver of for all the parents who pay the dues till now by 31st of October. Then they get the 25% off. So having said that, schools, yes, the buildings were closed. So a lot of those expenses may have gone down marginally. But the kind of expenses the school will have to now plan for and think about is huge. Of course, there were also those challenges of paying salaries. Some schools were able to give full, give half. Some have given deferred based on different levels of the pay packets. So those were also challenges. Some of the schools are in rented buildings. The rents were not reduced. Some were reduced. EMIs against loans for new construction. And of course, the safety protocol, because results of the boards came out, admissions had to happen. So one section of that physical space had to be alive in the school. So all that was also taken care of by the school management. And of course, in the allied services, except for the first three, rest of it was just off. There were no transport working, there was no kitchen working, there was no evening activity, nothing. Limited staff on rotation, of course, with all the protocol checking, limited office timing, limited operations, which were just confined to what was urgent and important at that point in time. But the question is this really the future of schooling? Is this what we are looking at, like for maybe another year, 2 years, forever? I'm not quite sure. But the truth is, we cannot return to the old way at all. But the second truth is, we cannot finish schooling or the transfer of knowledge or education, whatever you would like to name it, only through the online way. It is not possible. So the school as a physical structure is indispensable. It is what is going to allow the avenues and the platform and the environment for learning. But traditional classroom organization now has to be completely rethought, and that's why we are rethinking schooling. We have to redefine the ways our classes were arranged, and we have to think of new methods and new ways of schooling. We have to shift away from a very important concept that was very dear to us in the current system, and that is that time is the constant. We had fixed periods, we had a fixed school timing, and the content was variable. The learning and the curriculum was variable. We now have to switch over to learning being the constant and time being variable, because we are not going to get children together at the same time in the same place in the same way. So we have to rethink that. And of course, we have to value the teaching profession that has risen up to the occasion like all the other frontline COVID warriors, and their resilience has paid off, and we need to ensure that they are going to learn and move ahead with collaboration. So this is what the future really looks like. Schools are going to morph into what are called learning hubs, absolute new platforms of learning, because now the entire focus of teaching is going to shift from being teacher centric into learning centric, not even learner centric, learning centric. Technology is going to feature very, very majorly in school education, and it is going to move away from teaching culture to learning culture. With database technologies, the educators like all of you, teachers and people who are in leadership profiles as well, you will be able to do a lot of data analysis and create flexible learning spaces, continuous online learning processes, and it is going to spread across the non-fixed locations. It's going to happen at home, it's going to happen in the in-presence in school, and it's also going to happen in the community. There is also going to be an emergence of a more personalized kind of learning, because everybody isn't together. So a teacher is not kind of looking at everyone together. So if I have a class of 30 and I was to focus on 3 people, I would need 10 teachers. But when I have a data with me, I'm able to analyze the data. I can actually do personalized learning systems. And the type of school, the decisions we take today, you are all associated with schools in some way or the other. Some of you are teachers, some of you in leadership profiles, probably some of you are in the management. The decisions we take today will have a very long-term effect and a long-term consequence on what the future of schooling and education is going to be. So what are the learning arrangements that we are going to be looking at? The very first one is what is going on right now, the virtual online. We log in at a particular time, and if we are talking about the foundation years, then we are looking at maybe a half an hour interaction for the kindergarten group and maybe a 40-minute interaction for the grades 1 and 2, which is what your foundation belt is. So that has been going on. But now with unlockdown happening and the state and central government kind of coaxing us into reopening schools, because we know school buildings are indispensable and the socialization and everything that happens, we also have an in-presence or in-school concept which has to be considered. And in that, we have to now work on, instead of full class size, we have to work on what are called cohorts and pods. So I will be coming to that and explain what it is. So when we look at virtual and we look at in school, what is going to happen? We have to rethink schooling in a blended form, which is called the hybrid school model. So it is a combination of the virtual as well as the in-school present. So When we look at what is happening now, there is a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, concern of whether online learning is completely efficient and it is meeting the learning outcomes that we have planned. Because we don't know, we can't see the actual physical being of the person to know, has the child understood, is the child going to be able to apply the knowledge? So there are concerns about that. When we are thinking about the phase of unlockdown coaxing us into getting children back, the concern is with the parents. Are they comfortable? Are they feeling safe? Should my child be going back to school? I wonder. But when we look at maybe just for a few hours on a few days, my child needs to go to school, but the rest of the learning is happening at home, then that hybrid model is something that probably is what everyone is really comfortable with, given the safety protocols that have to be maintained. So we are looking at a pathway now where we have to look at balancing and blending learning across all these spaces. So let us now go to what is the virtual and online method that we are doing. So the lockdown arrangement had us learning at home. We've had the little ones sitting with the parents so that they can also have a little bit of support when they are learning. And the safeguard and preparations that we have to look at are all these. The complete list is over here. And yes, teachers, I will be sharing a summary of all this. So just hear me out. Don't kind of copy it down. It's going to come to you. So one of the concerns then and safeguards we need to look at is the digital device and the size. Now, CDC in America, as well as the health authorities in India, have said the mobile is an absolute no-no for children, especially for the foundation years. It is too small, it is held at a distance of hardly 6 to 8 inches, and the eyes are focusing in this manner. And we are already having reports of children in this age group in these 6 months having issues with headache and vision. So what comes beyond the mobile? You could have an iPad. Better than an iPad is a laptop. Better than a laptop is a desktop. And even better than that is if you can connect it to your TV, because that is what the child is comfortable viewing programs on. So we need to look at that. Screen time and eye care. Typically between 20 to 30 minutes is what is recommended for the kindergarten group, maybe 20 minutes for nursery or 30 minutes for senior KG or upper prime or upper KG, whatever the nomenclature is. And for 1 and 2 to a maximum of 40 minutes. That's about it. And we also have to be very careful about always repeatedly reminding them about the eye care rule of 20-20-20, which is after every 20 minutes, focus on something which is 20 feet away and look at it for 20 seconds and then revert back to the screen. We also need to look at the location and setup. If you remember that photograph I showed you, there was this boy sitting on the floor. There was a device which was parked on a small plastic stool. The books were on the floor. With that kind of posture, not a good idea. The back is going to go, the neck is going to go. Even the child in this photograph is kind of stooping forward, even though she's sitting on the father's lap. But we need to look at the posture. We also need to look at the emotional and social health of the small children, because it's not the same. I know I can see my friends through little screens and little outline boxes on the screen, but I can't hug them, I can't kiss them, I can't do anything with them. So is that really comfortable for the child? So we have to have a constant, when teachers are on online classes also, they have to kind of think of innovative ways of making the child feel, hey, I'm not there with you, but I'm still with you. Parent-teacher bond, very important, because the parent and teacher have to remain connected in the interest of the child, to know that the child is safe emotionally, socially, and in cognitive development. Socialization and mobility is definitely low. So it is recommended even at home that parents move out a little, go for a walk, maybe within a very small family or friend circle, allow them to meet other people, keeping in mind that the mask and the 6 feet distance is maintained. Parents also have to look at the concerns of internet safety. Maybe you have a digital nanny that doesn't allow the children to go and search on YouTube and Google and all these places. And of course, we have to have parental guidance where the age group is really small. And to just make it a little more comfortable, family time is very important. Even though parents have gone back to work, just make sure that there is nice family time, which is full of laughter, full of sharing good news and talking about things which are important in life, and that will work for the entire family's well-being. In person in school, post unlockdown, whatever, like Nandita ma'am said, We don't know when we are reopening. So with 5.0, they have only opened up from 15th of October, the higher classes, and that too, they are coming in only for doubt clarification. I'm sure as the time progresses, maybe the board classes from 9 to 12 will also be allowed to come in for the lab work, because that is an important aspect of the board exams. Possible. I'm not sure, but I'm just saying maybe. But these are what we need to look at if we are going to consider having the children coming back to school. Are they going to come on shifts on the same day? Are we going to do alternate days? Will the little ones come only for 2 days in the week, maybe just Monday and Thursday? Then another group comes Tuesday and Friday, and another group comes Wednesday and Saturday. These are things the school and teachers have to start thinking about from now. We also have staggered arrival times. On the same day, whichever group is coming, they cannot have a traffic zone. So we have to have a system where small groups are moving in batches, and we don't have a cluster of people together. There is also the concern of a single point entry and a single point exit, checking protocols, the temperature, the hand sanitizer, the spacing, all that needs to be considered, and it has to be marked. A PA system could also be used once the children are in, because we have to remember that there is a period and a schedule for constantly using the sanitizer or going and doing the hand wash in the appropriate area. So all schools have a PA system. So especially for the foundation years, you can make it into a nice little song, and maybe just say, hello kids, it's time to do the sanitization. Shall we sing a song? So you can all very creatively think of a beautiful song and just wake everyone up wherever they are, in whichever learning space they are, and do the little bit of sanitization. Then the use of non-academic spaces will now need to be considered. So auditoriums, just clean them out, make them into zones for learning space in small class setups. The dining hall, the open areas, I mean, just use any space into which that one big class can be divided into little groups. So these little groups are what are called cohorts and pods. And my next slide will tell you exactly why this is necessary in order to safeguard our children from infection. Teachers also, fortunately in the foundation years, we have a concept of mother teachers. So that works very well, because you're limiting one teacher to one group. Same set of children and one teacher. Frequent hand washing, surface cleaning. Obviously the children, when they come, they'll be sitting at a table, so they will need to learn how to do the surface cleaning. They will also have to use their personal items strictly by themselves. So I'm afraid if schools have been providing meals, maybe it's not a good time right now to go back to providing meals, because the exposure or scope of contamination either in the kitchen or while serving or while laying out the dishes or picking up the dishes is just far too high. So let the children bring in their own lunch boxes, they eat it within their space, but they also learn a little life skill of how to tidy up and clean up. And yes, all schools will now have to define a space which is an isolation ward. Because if a child is infected, the child has to immediately be moved into the isolation ward. There is an information reporting system that has to be put into place by the school. The parents should know who is the contact person in the school in case of cases of infection or something is amiss. And there is, of course, the quarantine protocol for the whole group in which that one child was infected. So cohorts and pods actually, AKA means another, also known as. So also known as small social bubbles. One teacher, same set of students. It is a mechanism to restrict the spread, because if there is a spread, it remains contained within that one group. Their interactions are also within that group. So it is again, each one in that group is also very conscious of the fact that my interaction only has to remain in that group. I can't go beyond that. The recommended size is 6, but we know in India, our class sizes are huge. When they say 6, obviously I'm talking about a Western concept where usually the class size is about 24, 25. So it's very easy to have a class broken into 4 groups. We have 40 children per class. So schools in India really need to think about what is the number that we are looking at in order to make that pod or that cohort. It is ideal for foundation years, 3 years to 8 years, which completely matches with our NEP 2020 foundational stage. And it is also good for the higher age groups. Why? Because the higher age group ones are a little more social, they are a little more rebellious, they want to break the rules, they want to go out and meet their friends. So smaller groups, then that social interaction also remains limited. And of course, for those of you who know of people who are doing homeschooling, that homeschooling group also has to be one fixed cohort or a pod. So those children may interact. Those children's parents who are the resource people or teachers, or if they are getting outside resource people to handle certain subjects, then that group remains fixed and the interaction remains within that group. Then the containment will happen for the virus spread. So this is a picture of what a regular non-cohorted or non-podded class looks like. Everybody is within the circle. The red dot signifies one infected person. The child keeps coming, or within the same day has probably infected those three. Those three then infected another three, and the spread was huge. Whereas if we now rethink schooling and we look at creating pods in a school, we are actually building that entire pod into little groups. Now notice how in one of the groups there is a red dot. So one pod had an infected child. The child has the scope of only infecting people in that pod. The moment the infection is detected, that pod gets quarantined. That pod does not come to school. But that does not mean the other pods stop coming to school, because we had different learning spaces for each of these pods. So that is going to continue. And as you can see that one student in a pod with COVID-19 results in exposure to only the members in the pod. And that I think is a really, really good idea that we can think of. So now we come to the hybrid model. In the hybrid model, we are looking at the online class, which is what is happening right now. It's happening at the homes. It's happening through technology, digital devices, and parental guidance. We are also looking at the in-school, which I've just explained to you. What are the aspects of the in-school that is going to happen? Of course, as school management, teachers, and leaders, you will have to think about the shift, the staggered timing, the number of days, number of hours. These are things we need to start planning and thinking about right now. And then, of course, we have the self-learning. So in the blended model or the hybrid model, we are also actually making it learner-centric, which means learning-centric, which means part of the learning is also going to happen at home independently by the student. So a little bit of research, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of inquiry, a little bit of curiosity leading to building up new knowledge. So these are going to come. And of course, with technology, with the database that we are going to collect, analyzing, accessing that data, we are going to be able to do real student management in a proper way, whether it is for handling their concerns, monitoring their progress, or even for pastoral care. Pastoral care meaning I do have a child who is struggling with something and I have a separate online session with that child, or maybe a group of children who need that little extra support. I do believe that the term which used to be used earlier was remediation, reinforcement, and now a more floral and nice sounding term is pastoral care. The debate is, are the parents really ready? If we look at what's been coming in the papers, as recently far back as 30th of September, we had only 28% parents feeling comfortable about sending their children home. That number dropped to 20%. From 28, 23 in August, it has now dropped to 20% in the beginning of October. And most of the parents feel in the foundation years, schools should not open till the next academic year. So we are looking at April or June of 2021. We also know that Unlockdown 5, as I said, has allowed the older children to come in only for doubt clearing sessions. What has changed is that school spaces are now going to open up. They have to be made available to children who want to come and interact in a one-to-one person-to-person mode with the teacher. But then the school has to be ready with all the safety protocols. And what will be open will be the access areas of the learning spaces, but not the community places. So we can't have a whole dining hall or a whole auditorium or a whole complete classroom being together. All the areas that are available have to be converted into learning zones. And I would like to add over here that while the government has been giving these guidelines that this is how it's going to open up, schools have to open up and have to start coming in, there is no compulsion for the child to attend school. The attendance is not going to be mandatory. That is a good thing for now. So it is in the hands of the parents to decide. Now, which group should come first? The government has been talking, let us phase it in. Let's have the bigger ones coming in first because they understand better and we assume that they are going to be more careful about following the protocol and guidelines. A recent study which came out in the Economic Times just on 29th of September says that children who are above the age of 10 and 12 are more susceptible to get it and be carriers than the little ones. So that's something to think about. Maybe because till age 10, we mothers have been very careful about the immunization schedule and cycle that we've done with our children. So their immunity is a little better, possible. So this is something that the school management, teachers, parents have to sit together, come together and decide on how are we going to phase it in. Let's leave aside the board years. They have to come. I know they have to come. 9th to 12th is one segment. But after that, which group do we begin with? So we need to consider that. Small children, they are less prone, less likely to roam around. We know that. The small children usually like to stay within the area of their class where they can see the teacher. It's comforting for them. They usually have one teacher, which is again very good for containing the virus. And they are better learners and follow routines. Also, less number of hours in the school. And of course, exact opposite is for the older children. The points are right there. They are a little more social, a little more careless, and a little more prone to breaking rules. Study hours will also be longer. So if the little ones are going to come for 2 hours, they may be coming for 4 hours. So we need to consider these aspects. The final call, of course, is something the government has told, the central government has told the state government to take charge. State governments have issued guidelines. The reopening guidelines at a macro level have been given by the state government and the Department of Education in each and every state. But as schools, the micro level planning will have to be done from now. And we need the broad guidelines of how the school is going to work, and then grade wise or level wise, we need to do really minute detailed planning about what is it in the curriculum that we want to transact in school, how are we going to do it within the small pods, what activities are we going to include, who is the teacher who is assigned. All these things will have to be defined and planned from now, because we don't know, even if we open in April next year, imagine you've got a 6-month head start. So let's plan really well to ensure that we are totally ready and we contain the virus in whatever way possible. Before reopening, of course, all the schools have been told they have to do a complete sanitization of the entire infrastructure. They will have to also have backup of personnel, the protection kits, and everything that is required to keep it safe and healthy. Classes, this we've already covered. These are issues that had come up in Karnataka. They have started holding classes for different, thinking of different grades on different days. The issue that has come up is if we are going to do shifts, if we are going to break up a class into different groups, it's going to be, the school hours are going to be from 7 in the morning till when? For the teacher, she comes in the morning. When does she go home? If shifts of children are going to be coming, do we have enough staff to do staff rotation across the shifts? If I'm calling in children in batches from different age groups, does the bus have to go that many times on the same route to pick up different age groups of children? These are questions we have to start looking at now, especially for schools who have their own buses. Schools who are outsourcing can for a while probably tell the parents, we are looking at 3 months where we would like you to drop your child off or choose the mode of transport that you feel you're comfortable with. So it could be a very small, the same pod, the pod that is created by the school. If there are 6 children, maybe 4 children out of that group, they come in a carpool. Again, the interaction is only with those children, only with those parents. So these are things that we need to design and think about. So final call will of course be the schools, in what manner, when and how to open, because they need to ensure the safety and in-person physical spaces, because they have to have the faith of the parents. The parents have to feel safe that yes, the school that I've chosen for my class child is ready and I'm feeling very safe in sending my child there. The final call is also the parents. If I'm not feeling safe, I will not send my child to school. I'm more comfortable with online learning. I will support my child, but that's it. But if I'm going to send, am I comfortable using the bus, the auto, the van in which children are packed like sardines into a tin can? These are questions that parents will ask. So there are 3 phases to getting ready. One is the pre-opening, then what will happen before the opening, and then of course what is going to happen in the post-opening. So pre-opening, I'm going to be sharing information. It's a lot of information, but these are just suggested guidelines and little tips and tricks that we all need to think about from now. So I'm going to look at pre-opening at home and pre-opening at school. So at home, we have to start talking to the children right from right now about what is the new system of schooling that's going to happen. Children need to be prepared and told that you are not going to be going to school every day. You will be going for a few days to school. You're primarily going to be home and studying through online classes or through your own self-study activities. We also have to create a mood in the house that is just positive. We can't have parents very verbally and very loudly sharing their concerns. पता नहीं ये क्या हो रहा है, ये स्कूल वाले क्या सोचते हैं, उनको ऐसा लगता है कि हम भेज देंगे, ऐसा कोई थोड़ी ना भेजता है. The child is listening. The child will pick up what the mother or the father is saying. And then the child will be very prone to say, मुझे नहीं जाना है, मम्मी को नहीं जाना है तो मुझे भी नहीं जाना है. So let's think of positives. Let's think, oh, that'll be great. Yeah, so maybe we just meet a few people, but isn't it going to be nice to see our friends after 6 months? I would love to be in your place. Let's think positives. We have to start practicing the mask time and sanitization time at home from now. So you can have a little schedule in the house. All right, for this activity, let's all of us, for the next 15 minutes, we all have to wear the masks. So everybody wears the mask. Everybody does the sanitization or everybody does the hand washing. And we all know, you are all ECE zone teachers. You know that children are creatures of habit. And the moment we reiterate the same action over and over again, they pick it up very easily. So for that, I'm going to be sharing with you a little movie. I'm sure it's come to you on WhatsApp, but this will just serve as a reminder. Age is not a barrier for understanding the importance of COVID safety protocol. And here it is. Just watch the child and what she's doing. She's sanitizing her hands. She knows how to use it. Now she's being asked, does she know how she has to wash her hands during COVID times? Look at the way she's rubbing her nails, her thumb, her fingers. Amazing. And look at her age. Corona is not going to come to me at all. So it's wonderful to see that children are able to do this. So now we come to the how-tos of typically what children do in school. Yes, we have a class full of children who sneeze, they cough, they itch anywhere, wherever it's itchy, they'll go here, they'll dig into their noses with their little fingers. We see it all the time and we say, hey, don't do that. Why don't you use your tissue? Here's a handkerchief. What do we do now? So from home, we start training them that, you know, this little bug can be a little dangerous. So when you want to sneeze or cough, this is how you need to do it. So of course, as adults, we need to model the same. So dad and mom, if we want the child to do it, we better learn to sneeze and cough into our elbows as well. So we do that. And how do you handle the itchy part? Now my nose is itchy, I'm wearing a mask. How do I handle it? I don't slip my mask and then itch and then pull my mask back again because I've contaminated my fingers. Or if my fingers were contaminated for some reason, I have just passed on the virus near my nose. So complete no-no. So we have to train them from home about how to handle these little issues. Use the elbow wherever possible, switching on a light, pushing open a door, pushing the handle of a door, wherever possible, use the elbow. You want to move something, use the elbow. Use the elbow. So make it into a nice little song, you know, with a nice rhythm that I can use my elbow to open the door. I use my elbow to push my bag. I use my elbow to move the books. You can be creative. I know you all are. ECE teachers are the most creative and the most innovative. Hats off to you all. And of course, practice social distancing. So one of the methods that they use in the West is aeroplane. So they all made to move around like aeroplanes and they make the humming sound as well. So when you have aeroplane, typically for a small child, you are roughly looking at 6 feet distance. So, or just about, so with a little space. So when they are standing in lines or in groups, the aeroplane method works really well. So this is in a corridor, and when they are in the playground as well, if they use the aeroplane method, then they are far away from each other, and that helps to protect them. Washroom etiquette, very important. We may have to think of schools where even inside the WC cubicles, we need to use a sanitizer. And why is that? Because the child will be handling the plumbing works inside the room. The child may have to drop the seat, lift the seat, maybe handle a spray, handle the tap. So sanitize before you use the WC, zip up, sanitize again, and then get out of the cubicle. And tell them straight facts. Tell them that the virus stays on surface tops. So we need to have it clean. And yes, it stays very well on firm tops. So metal tops, wooden tops, and a lot of these plastic tops, this virus stays. There is still a little doubt about whether it really carries through our clothes or anything which is porous, like newspaper. Many households today have started getting the newspapers in. They don't read the online paper. They do have the newspaper coming in. They leave it lying outside for about 2 hours in the morning. Usually the delivery is really early, and they read the paper thereafter. The frequency and how-tos on surface cleaning, because the children, if they're going to school, they will have to learn to keep their surface area clean on their tables. So the spray bottle, the tissue, how do I pick up the tissue then and drop it into the closed bin? And we also have to tell them the straight fact that if I am going to school, if you are going to school, beta, you will not be able to meet some of your family members so often. And it is going to break their heart. But if we prepare them from now and explain to them why this is necessary, because children, if they start going to school, we cannot have them interacting with the grandparents so often. We cannot have them interacting with pregnant mothers. We cannot have them interacting with people who are ailing due to some immunocompromised situation of either diabetes or pneumonia or asthma or whatever it is. We will have to keep them apart. And that is going to be a real heart jerker for them. But if we prepare them, I think they will understand and they will come through. Use of personal items have to be enforced in school. So start from home. Get them some really fun cutlery, a nice looking plate, their glass, their bottle, their bag, their books, their table mat, everything is theirs. So if we train them from home, these are my things, I will not share it, not even with mom, not even with dad. That same psyche, the same habit, the same attitude will transfer when they go to school. So even my best friend is not going to share my things with me. I'm not doing it with mom and dad, so I won't do it with my friends either because I need to be safe. And of course, disposal of waste items. So maybe in the bag, we have these little pouches. There has to be a closed bin. So how do I dispose of left food, used tissue, paper items? Maybe I've crumpled up paper. The drawing wasn't so good. How do I dispose that off? Start preparing them from home. When we look at schools, schools have a tall order already given by the government and the state department. And that tall order is going to work out really expensive for the schools. So my heart really goes out because there is, on the one side, schools may not have incurred expenses because the school buildings were shut, but there are fixed costs and fixed maintenance work has to happen even in an empty building. Secondly, what we are looking at in terms of the added items, infrastructure, systems, and protocols that the school needs to now take up with reopening, the expenses are going to be humongous. So we need to plan for that from now. So sanitization from top to bottom, left to right, just about any space in the school, any corner, it'll have to be done. And no, guess what? It's not once in the morning and once when the children leave. There is a schedule. Whichever space has been used by a group has to be sanitized before another group comes. Or if this group has shifted to another place, that area should be sanitized before this group goes there. So sanitization, you need a complete set of allocated staff only for cleaning. You also need an allocated staff for how to manage the washrooms. Another good idea would be, we have a lot of things in school which are in COVID times seemingly redundant. We don't want those extra things to be visible. So reduce the items, remove the carpets, remove furniture that is not going to be required for the in-presence cohort or pod system of schooling. Remove decorative stuff, a huge standing vase in a corner or some, statue or whatever. Just remove them, because you'll get more space to create learning spaces for the children. So that is how the learning spaces are going to increase: admin spaces, performance spaces, and go outdoors. Go outdoors. Children love having class outside. They love being out in nature. Of course, we also have to prepare the washrooms. So there have to be 6 feet distance floor markers for waiting to use the washroom. Other than that, there would be schools who probably don't have cubicles and you just have separators between the urinals. So we have to make only alternate ones accessible. So red tapes on the one adjacent. We also have to maybe tie up plastic bags around the taps which are adjacent to each other. So this one is used, this one not. This one is used, this one not. We have to design that. The gate and corridor waiting areas will also have to have floor markers. So in the floor markers, if children are waiting, they need to stand. We are already doing that when we go to places in offices, or if we are going to banks, or we are going to shops. There are these floor markers, and we are very obediently standing within the floor markers to maintain social distancing. Gate entry and checking protocol: a fixed set of staff members need to be there for temperature checking. Where are we going to do it? Which gate? How many people are required? What is the number of students who are going to come in? So how many people do I need? One is checking temperature, the child moves ahead, another one is going to be doing the sanitizer, then the child moves ahead. Then of course the parent communication and the signed undertaking. We have to have parents sign an undertaking, which there are various drafts which are being circulated. We'll probably get a better one from the government. And parents who have the faith and they have opted for the in presence in school, they will have to sign an undertaking and that they are completely okay with the child coming to school. It is also recommended that the Arogya Setu app is available with parents. Older children, if they are carrying mobile phones, which has now become the learning device of the day, there was a time when we banned mobile phones in school, and now we are saying, hey kids, bring your mobile phone. So the whole concept has changed. Entire schooling concept has changed. And the location can be set on so that we know, and it beeps if we are very close to a person who has reported infected. Staff allocation, work timing, these are things we need to look at. I talked about classroom arrangement. So here are some pictures. We have to now move back into the one-way facing class. If we had groups which are sitting in circles, if you see in the second picture, there are zones which have the red sticker. So nobody can sit in those spaces. There are play areas and activity zones where the rectangles have been marked and children are using that. This is the one on the left. This is in Korea, where they have these sort of PVC clear sheets which have been put in a frame which has marked that table edge, so that the child can see through the sheet, but it is protected. And of course, when you go outdoors, you can have large tables. You can have 2 to a table, 3 to a table, as long as the 6 feet distance is maintained. Here is another one in which the spaces have been divided. If you see this little the puzzle tables which have been locked together, only 3 children are sitting, whereas each little block can seat 3 children. So those original 9 have been reduced down to 3. One little red playmat is for 1 child. That blue playmat has 4 circular discs. So 4 children can play in those 4 corners because of the social distancing measurement that has been done. Play equipment should be arranged in small trays or boxes, because after each child plays with it, it's very easy to then dump it into the solution, sanitize it, and then put it back in the tray. Make learning visible. We have thinking visible, make learning also visible. Whatever the children are doing, they don't want to look at, they also want to be appreciated when they come to school. So their work should go up. And of course, whatever the COVID guidelines and protocols you want to sort of revise in their mind or in their vision, put them up. Class kits, each class, each school office has to have extra masks. They have to have sanitizer bottles in extra numbers, the plunger ones, tissues, covered bins, all these, if they are not there, we need them. The first week in school, I don't think you're going to be covering academics at all. These are all the things you will have to look at. getting the teacher kits ready, pre-mailing the friendly habit forming videos to the parents before, at least 1 week before school starts, or maybe a month before school starts. So children keep seeing it, and these are enjoyable videos. Repeated instructions, the no-nos, no sharing items, no hugging, no kissing, no high fives, all that. So the first week, because they are not coming in every day, so they'll probably come in for 2 days or 3 days, it's only going to go in instilling these safety habits, the how-tos as well. Now here is a sample video. It's a 2-minute video, but this is an idea of what we can send in advance pre-opening from the school to the parents in order to prepare the children.
Kids, there's a germ out there called the coronavirus. Wearing a mask is one way we can help stop its germs from spreading and help keep everyone safe. Dad, do you have your mask on?
I sure do, Mom. How about you, Millie?
Yup, Mom let me pick out the color I wanted. I even put one on my bear.
Germs can get into the air by coughing and sneezing, so wearing a mask is one way that we can help keep everyone safe. There are other things that we do to stay safe too, like washing our hands.
We always wash our hands after we touch our mask or take our mask off. And you know the happy birthday song, right? Sing it 2 times. That's how long you should wash your hands. If you don't have soap and water, you can use hand sanitizer. Make sure to put it all over your hand, front and back. Let it dry, don't wipe it off.
It's important that you remember
1,
to wear a mask,
2,
wash your hands,
3,
cough and sneeze into your elbow,
4,
don't touch your face,
5.
stay in your own space, and don't share your belongings. The combination of doing all these things can help keep germs from spreading.
Everybody looks different when they're wearing a mask, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Some of the nicest, coolest people wear masks.
It's easy to wear a mask. Clean your hands first.
So
and then
I'm
hold
going to
it by the
stop
ear.
this because the rest of it is, I'm going to share my PPT now. I seem to have jumped. Let me just see. Yeah. And I need to screen share.
Yeah, we can see it, Ishika. You can just make it full screen.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the sample video. And of course, nowadays, especially for the foundation years, we do have an option of having our face photographed. And there are people who are making masks with the lower portion of our face. So when you look at this lady wearing this mask, the mask is on the right-hand side. So the child is very comfortable seeing the teacher's face instead of it being covered with some white or blue or gray or pink or, you know, which is blocking the features of the face. So this is just something that I found, and it's entirely up to you whether you would like to use something like this, but it would be really nice if children could see the teacher's face. Prepare, prepare, prepare in advance at home. Every morning when the opening happens, you have to be ready to do certain things as a routine, as a schedule every single day. Every single day, check your child's fitness, which means the temperature, if the child has a runny nose, did the child have a little cough? Any symptom, the child should not be sent to school. Prepare the bag with labeled items, every single thing, because we are teaching our children to use their personal items themselves. So everything needs to be labeled. Meals and water bottles need to be put in the morning. Prepare them for the mode of transport. If they're going to use the bus, warn them. If you're using the handle, the railing to climb into the bus, sit at your seat, open your bag, take the sanitizer and rub it all over your hand. If you're going to be touching the seat, if you're touching the railing in the front, rub sanitizer on your hand, and no sharing of any personal items. We also, when the kids come back from school for whatever duration they are there, it's better that the mask that was worn in the school is disposed of before entering the house. And the moment the child comes in, take the child into the washroom, shed the clothes, shower, bathe, get into new clothes, which is what we adults are doing now in any case. But it's a good idea to do it with the children as well. And of course, check the bag for the water bottle or the disposal pouch or the lunch box. And all those will need to be handled. On the lighter side of things, this is something that is quite possible that could happen. You've sent your child in the morning with a mask and the child has loved somebody else's mask in the bus and has come back wearing something different. So we need to tell the children from now, even if somebody else's mask looks much better than yours, we cannot exchange masks. Sanitizing with a gentle spray over the bag, over the book, stationery items that the child had taken to the school and come back. It may be a good idea to have 2 bags. So if the child is using 1 bag on one day, the next day that bag is put out in the sun and the second bag is used. So you can cycle that. So these are things that you can think of as parents at home. Reduce and minimize contact with all the family members, small babies, the aged members, as well as people who are mothers who are expecting. Engage in the conversation about the day. By that I don't mean, oh, at school gaye the, kya kiya? What did you do? What did teacher say? What did so and so child say? What did you eat? How did you eat? Where did you go? No, just how was your day? Just tell me about it. And maybe you can start with how your day was at home or at your place of work. And pick up indicators in the child's conversation where there may have been a little carelessness in not observing the precautions that we have tried to train the children in. When the school is opening, of course, at the school level, we have to be ready with the kits. Our teachers are going to be needing them. Of course, children will be told to wear a mask and also bring a mask, extra mask in the bag, even though the school has extra masks. But the child will be carrying a mask in the plastic in the bag as well as wearing a mask. Of course, the temperature gun, the gloves, the eye shields for sanitizing. The team that is going to sanitize will need the eye goggles as well. And for teachers who want to feel a little extra careful over and above the mask, you can also wear the clear visor, which is in the front. This is how it's going to look at the gate. Somebody is going to be checking the temperature. Somebody is going to be giving the sanitizer. This has been a matter of concern. Unfortunately, the temperature gun, even the name itself is extremely repulsive, is kind of a little scary for children. Look at the way the little girl is looking. We are actually making them, we tell children we shouldn't play with guns. And here every day there is somebody pointing a gun at me and taking my temperature. It looks like a gun. It's overwhelming. It's frightening. So there are other ways in which the temperature can be checked. Nowadays, they check it on the wrist. We also have other devices. So the wrist is one. There are devices that look very much like this TV remote. So instead of holding it like a gun, you may just be holding it like this and taking my temperature, which is less scary, less fearful, less overwhelming. And what is now coming up in the West is the children also wear bands. You know, the way we wear our Fitbits or the health bands. So the children also wear something like a band in which at any given time, if the child just taps it, the teacher is able to see the temperature of the child. So the school has to be ready with all this as well as planning the pods. A good idea would probably be to plan the pods based on the transport circuit or the route that the bus takes. Plan for the entry exit pathways, the morning checking, who's going to be doing it, where it's going to be done. Is it a single point entry and single point exit, or are we going to be used the same point for both ways? In that case, how do we route the children, because they cannot be crossing each other? When the children enter the school, the guided routing from the gate through the common spaces into their learning space, and strictly no air conditioning. I know India is a really warm country, but open out the windows, open out the doors, no air conditioning at all, because then if there is an infection, that virus is going to just circulate in that trapped air in the room. And any indication of ill health, we have to isolate, whether it's the teacher, the staff, or the child, and call the family members to take it up from there. Use the outdoors, we've already done that. Yes, and there are schools in which they have subject rooms or theme rooms in which children would move into that room and the teacher would be constant. That's a no-no. We now have to minimize movement in the school. So now only the teacher moves, the children remain constant within that single space, learning space. Eliminate traffic zones, schedule sanitization, monitor parents and visitors. Parents don't have to come to school for every little thing. The phone is there, emails are there. When the online session is there, you can have a chat with the parents. Only emergencies allow visitors and parents to come, and be very transparent, open, and honest with parents in your communication. So post-opening, this is applicable for all. First and foremost rule is stop worrying. Yes, you will have infection. Every single school space, education space is going to have some element of infection coming in, because no matter how hard you try, it's like saying, I follow traffic rules, I still have accidents. So it's going to happen, because I may be careful, maybe the other person isn't. And that other person has opened that little window for the infection to come in. So it is going to happen, but we cannot worry, and let us avoid the blame game. If a child has tested positive, parents should not be blaming the school. It's like saying, you know, my child has come home and is using a profanity. I'm sure he's picked it up in school. Almost as if to say the teachers had it in the curriculum, it was written on the board and the child learned it and took it back home. It doesn't work like that. There's a van, there's a autos, there are older children in the same vehicle. The child could have picked it up from anywhere. Same for corona. The child may have picked it up from anywhere. The teacher may have picked it up from anywhere. The parent may have picked it up from anywhere and transmitted it. We should not be playing the blame game. We just have to focus on how to contain the spread, how to do palliative quarantine the pod from where that particular child was so that whole pod doesn't come. We have to plan to be very, very supportive to the infected person, whether it's a parent or a teacher or a child, and tell them, look, nothing horrible has happened. It's going to come through. You're going to be fine. We just have to wait it out, and you're going to be back soon. So let's be cheerful about it. And let's be honest. I know there are times when we doubt whether parents are really honest, and we have seen it. Children running temperature, the parents still send them to school. And we wonder, why did the parents send? Do they not realize that influenza is a virus and it's going to spread? Children with chicken pox come to school, chicken with conjunctivitis come to school, and within 1 hour, we have to call up the parents and say, please take them back. So we have to talk to parents in advance and say, this isn't like a chicken pox or a flu or a cough. This is much worse. So we request you to be honest with us, just as we are going to be very transparent and open with you. Follow the government guidelines and keep social interactions to the minimum, despite whatever unlockdown privileges the government is going to give you through the various versions of unlockdown. Yes, beware of complacency on the one hand and going overboard. We kind of become a little careless and sit back. We have to remember that we have to remember and do all the protocols. Let's avoid discussing COVID at home too much. At the dinner tables, when we are just sitting casually, the way we have all switched off from SSR, let us just switch off from talking COVID with kids. Absolutely not. Model COVID behavior, because the little eyes are upon you. When the child sees the parents doing something, the child is more, in a very friendly way and more accepting way, the child is going to be able to model the same behavior. Maintain a very healthy lifestyle. Look at your diet, the children's diet, exercise. There are people who are actually, even within the confines of the home, putting in somewhere between 5,500 to 7,000 steps, 10,000 steps a day. Because you need to get that metabolism working, you need to get your heart pumping, you need to do deep breathing. All that is very good for building your immunity, apart from the immunity boosting food and activities. Be happy, enjoy your family time, do stuff that you love doing together. Just play music and, do free dancing or play Scrabble, depending on whatever the age of your children are. Just enjoy, joke around, and remember to have hope. This is the last aspect that I'll be covering, which is teacher empowerment. Teachers, you have come a long way, but this is not the end. Continuous teacher empowerment is a must, because depending on whether the strain of the virus is changing or how it is behaving, there are countries like Brazil and Spain where there is a resurgence of the virus. And I believe if people get it the second time, it can be lethal. So we have to be very, very aware of what the guidelines are, what the government rules are. We also have to remain updated with digital empowerment, because yes, fine, Zoom class, we've taken a Zoom class or a Google Meet class or any of the other rooms that we have used, but it's not the only thing. And when I'm using a meeting room, am I going to be able to use a whiteboard? Am I going to be able to do an attendance recorder? Am I going to be able to show simple experiments? Am I going to be able to handle math equations? So we constantly have to keep learning and seeing how best to deliver the learning to children or engage them in learning. I correct myself, we don't deliver. We engage them in learning, which is a two-way process between the teacher and the child, and make sure that they enjoy what they are doing with understanding for further application. Yes, we are treading new waters. So there will be challenges. I've thought of this amazing new strategy. I try it out and it just falls flat. So let's adapt, let's modify, let's take on the challenges with the hope, okay, this didn't work, let's look at something else. Maybe this will work. Collaborate. Maybe your didn't work, but some other teacher strategy worked. So do group teaching and take it up. Be accessible and supportive to parents. Work as cooperative team. And keep in mind that it is now learning centricism, no longer teacher centricism. So you have to plan activities which is going to be learner centered, learning centered for the learner, where the child is in charge of the learning process that is going to happen, but guided by you, supported by parents at home. Just come out of that mind frame of a 40-minute lecture period or the classroom dynamics or the in-person assessment that you were doing. How can I still assess my child if the child is not attending school? So these are things we have to plan from now. Learn to look at a goal and set your learning outcomes in a manner that is going to expand the child's potential, expand the child's knowledge, expand the child's entire well-being and personality. Remember to engage all the 5 E's in any aspect of the curriculum design that you are thinking. That it has to be engaging, it should foster exploration, it should have experiential learning, it should foster inquiry, the curiosity, and it should be enjoyable. These are 5 E's which are mapped to the new NEP. If you see the NEP, they have talked about how every process, they are talking about multilingualism, they're talking about integration, thematic approach. They want the subject domains to drop the barriers and merge. But these are elements in the curriculum delivery we have to keep in mind. We also have to plan for continuing learning for a quarantine pod. So say we have 3 pods, A, B, C. C has an infected child. They are now not going to come to school for minimum 14 days, if not 21. How are we going to ensure that the learning is going through? So maybe when pod A and pod B are in school, that in-person live process can be streamed through the Zoom or through whatever manner that the school has set up to the group that is at home. So there is no learning gap, there is no learning loss. And the teacher doesn't have to do it 3 times. That one second teacher who's doing that particular concept or that activity or whatever, the same thing is being streamed to the quarantined pod. And use digital data access and plan the monitoring and tracking system for children to make it a little more personalized, which is what I had also talked about earlier. Continue being the amazing COVID warriors you have been, and thank you, teachers. It's been a really, really engaging session right now for me, because I have been able to revisit all the points that I think are really important and everyone in the education community needs to look at. And remember, the best innovation that inspires most young people is you, the teacher. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, Ishita. I don't know what to say, but I'm not going to say it in my words.
Thank you,
In
ma'am.
the chat, there are many, many things that have come in, Ishita. And the group is saying you have gone into so much detail. Someone has said you have done your homework and wow. And now it's time for us to do our homework, because you've given us a lot of homework to do now. Lot of things that we have to really think about. And others have said that you've done it so well that you've served it on a platter, and they are going to be able to implement it much better because they know what you have given them. And there's one person who has said, and others have said, yes, we must, is we have to make it work.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the messages from the chat, Dina said that, and I think that's what all of us must go with. That it's very difficult, it's sounding unbelievably difficult. Expenses are also going to come up. But
Yes.
we have to make it work. We made other things work. We must make this work. Thank you so much, Ishita. I don't know how to.
One good
All
thing
of
is
us are
about-
feeling.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I would like to put one disclaimer. I have tried to put together the most important points.
Yeah.
There is just so much more, but this is a starting point. Let us begin. Let us use this time that we have right now before schools reopen to get really ready. Think of all the possible positives and negatives and be ready for it. Think of all the things that can happen. So actually have discussions, have demos with teachers and parents and say, okay, here is a classroom. What is a concern you might have? Play around with the concerns. If you think it's a genuine concern, plan for how are you going to take it up as a challenge and overcome that concern. So we have time. The biggest
Yes.
thing is we've not been told open tomorrow. We have so much of time.
That's the whole thing. That this time we have time, and we have time to discuss like this. And
Yes.
actually, what we should be doing is to collaborate and help each other in this
Yes.
whole process. You know, if
This
we
isn't
have
a battle to be won by one person. And it
Yes.
cannot be won by one person, one school, one community. We have to come together.
Yes.
The biggest of armies, they win the biggest of battles. One
That's
soldier is not going to be able to do it.
Now, anyone who has some questions to ask, please raise your hand, physically raise your hand, and we can respond to you. Of course, there are anyone with questions? Radhika, is there
There is
anyone who's
there is a lot to think about. So the process has begun. There are so many
Yes.
things we have to consider. We'll have to give a proper thought. We'll have to have discussions with you, experienced people like Nandita ma'am, Sonia ma'am. We need to come together and we have to really make it work. So
It
there is a
will
lot of homework, like you said.
There is a lot of homework. And
Yeah.
what I feel is, yes, we've been reading it in the papers. Yes, the schools have been getting the guidelines and circulars. The board has been sending it. But we haven't really seriously sat down and thought about, okay, what if we have to reopen tomorrow? Are we ready? I don't think any of us are.
No.
There is just so much planning to be done. Or while I would like to say, maybe when you looked at my slides, you just said, oh my God, this is just so overwhelming. Let's just forget about opening schools. Let's not open them. It's easier to not open them and let's next year. But next year is going to come, and before you know it, look at this, 6 months have gone by, and in 6 months, the new academic session is about to begin. We are already in October. March 31st is the end of the old academic term. 1st of April, the new one will begin. Are we going to be ready? That is the question. So I have just given you a lot of food for thought. And if we discuss, if we collaborate, we are going to take this on and we are going to overcome it. I am sure of it. It will work.
Neeta, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you. I'm Neeta Luthria Rao. I head the primary section at Bombay International School. And this was an absolutely amazing session. Thank you so much. The only question that's in my mind, I belong to a school where things like this are possible. But what's really haunting me is that there are so many schools with such limited resources. I shudder to think how they're going to manage all this. It's unimaginable. This kind of prep, there are children who have no drinking water in their home. They have no place to bathe. They have no, all these things. It seems such a first world problem. It's frightening. Yes. But that's not taking away from what you said. Everything you said was really valuable. This is just something that's bothering me, that how are we going to manage as a nation with this?
So I think one of the aspects and attitudes that we are now moving towards is schools, companies who have been blessed with being able to have the continuing education on, have to now really, in a very philanthropic way, look at the marginalized sections of society where the children have a learning gap of March till now. They haven't had even 1 minute of learning in the last 6 months. So how are we going to be even reaching out to those children? We are blessed. We are in cities, we are in towns, we are in places where digital technology is available. Our kids haven't even had a minute of, loss of curriculum. Go to the villages. Those kids have only been playing with the cattle, going into the fields. The government schools are closed. Some schools have completely wound up. Some people have lost their jobs. Many of the teachers have started food stalls. They are selling clothing items or kitchenware door to door, carrying it in a sari wrapped thing. So it has impacted the marginalized sections in a horrible, horrible way. So while we count our blessings, maybe while we are looking at our own preparation, if we have the resources, I know it is a big challenge. If we have the resources, maybe we look at a school that is in close proximity to ours and see if we can somehow embrace the children in whatever small way we can, to ensure that a little bit of learning is going to reach out to them. That is the only hope I can speak about right now.
Ambika, Ambika, can you ask?
Good afternoon to all the members, and thank you, Ishita ma'am, for such a wonderful session. I come from an organization called as Mumbai Mobile Crashes, and I'm the training officer there. We are starting our training, like so we train teachers for Bal Balika training. My question is that how do I train the teacher right now to handle the children? You know, what is it that I can start as a topic, or I can put it into my curriculum so that my teachers can get the sense of this situation, and they can start preparing themselves. So yes.
So if it's the really tiny ones, it's going to be a very big challenge, because the physical contact definitely has to be kept to the minimum. And the little ones hanker for that hug. The moment they walk in through the gates of your school or your creche, they come running in and they want to give you that hug. So as I said, the preparation of going back to those learning spaces or daycare spaces or creche spaces, the preparation has to start on both fronts. So you will need to teachers how to curb their little, it's going to be a tug at their heart as well. I can't hug my kids. I love that warmth that just permeates through that hug, and makes me feel alive with my kids. So this has to be done at home by the parents, as well as by you in the creche or the daycare center where you are preparing your teachers. We have to keep physical contact at the minimum. So yes, you do have to train your teachers. Your teachers have been used to a certain way in handling the learning or the interaction in the physical space that was available, but that is going to change now. It is going to change because social distancing is a big, big word. Children will not understand it, but they will understand why it is important to stay apart, even though. So let children just give fly kisses. Let children give a virtual hug. Like I'm giving you all now, I enjoyed myself today. I'm still feeling good. We have to make sure that the children also feel as good. Okay, who wants to give me a hug? Come on, teachers, give me a hug. Right now.
Of
So
course.
We do this.
Of course, we have to learn different ways of showing love.
Yes.
Yes.
And we are very capable of doing that because we feel love.
So, I mean, there are absolutely crazy things you can do. You can do an action, something like, from your heart, and you go, the love has come to my cheek. I've just sent it to you. So the child receives it and puts it on the cheek and says, I got your love. So you just have to put on your thinking cap and be very creative, and children are going to love you. As I said, just get out of that time structured classroom situation arrangement and just think of, if the school decided, fine, okay, I'm just going to take somebody's name, Savita Bhatt. The school decides that, Savita, just do whatever you want, but make sure my children's knowledge is being expanded, their personality is growing. You will say, hey, I don't even have to worry about the space. I don't have to worry about books. I don't have to worry about chapters. What will I want to do with my kids? Now that's a thought. So you will start thinking, and you will suddenly realize your vision isn't going to be myopic anymore. You've just removed those blinders and you say, wow, that's a huge world. Why hadn't I thought of it earlier? You will yourself find very innovative ways of rethinking schooling and yet making it enjoyable for the kids. Just think and collaborate, because group thinking brings out amazing results. I'm speaking from experience. I know one person whose face I can see in this team. We have always worked together, and we have come up with the most amazing out of the box ideas. And we have enjoyed ourselves with the kids, literally the rolling on the floor with the kids kind of excitement. So you'll be able to do it. Believe me, you can. And yes, that we started with a line, we will make it work.
Anukshi has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Ishita, thank you so much for this amazing session. And I have one question actually. So I work with 3-to-1 Education Foundation, and we work with the most under-resourced schools in Bombay, Bangalore, and Hyderabad, which someone mentioned the challenges, and actually the schools that we work with face those challenges on an everyday basis. So I just wanted to ask you that if you had to place your bet or pick like 2 things that would work across, even for schools and teachers who do not have those resources, or who are who face these challenges on an everyday basis. So if you had to place your bet and pick like 2 to 3 things that you think would work across regardless of the context, what would those be?
Okay, so what I feel is, first of all, I think everybody has TVs at home. Everybody. I think even if you're looking at Bombay, you go into the slums, the first thing you see a slum, you'll see the TV antenna. Everybody has TV. So look at the technology that is currently available. See what is easily available and already there with the segment you need to address. Once you know that this is a platform through which I can reach the child, then you step back and think of what is it that I can now port through this device. So states have started up channels. The only problem about TV channels is it's a one-way interaction. It's only throwing at the children. Whereas for privileged schools like ours, we have a two-way interaction, because in a Zoom class or a Google Meet class, we allow the children to also speak to us. On a TV, it doesn't happen. But hey, at least it's not nothing. Something is reaching them. So you can plan for videos, pre-made videos. You can plan for, audiobooks which you can just send on the mobile, because audiobooks are little snippets which the parent, I'm sure everybody has a mobile. So think about using the devices that are currently available and map your curriculum, design, pattern, activities based on that channel. Because if you think of something and say, well, our school has decided this is the way it's going to be done, and the parents don't have that technology support, you're going to be leaving out a major segment and chunk that is not going to receive what you've planned. So you may need to think about that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else with a question? If not, we wind up with I think with that, what Dina has said, we will make it work.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I really suggest to you that if there are some questions, see, in fact, Dina also mentioned that there's so much that we've heard, you may get some questions afterwards.
Yes.
So those questions, please put them on our group so that we can, the answer will also help the others.
Correct. Absolutely.
Please try to put it on the group rather than asking individually, so that it will help the whole group. And let us become more active with the group regarding these issues, or any issues for that matter. But right now, these issues that we have talked about. So, and please do put questions on the group, or send it to the email. You received an email to give you the information regarding the ID and the password. So please use that email ID to send us a question. Thank you all very, very much for being here and being so receptive to the session.
So as promised, I'm going to be making a summary of this session, and I'm also going to be sharing some links that you may want to look at. These would be links of how to design your learning spaces, what are the things you can take into consideration when you're preparing the foundation your children to come in. When you're making your little pods and cohorts or bubbles, then how do you track your bubble movement? So there are CDC proposed formats. So who is in my bubble? What is the contact number? Who are the people connected to the members in my bubble? So there are various formats that I'll be sharing, and Resonances will be sharing it with all of you. And thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time.
So when I mentioned please share it in the group, I mean share it in the early childhood educators zone, so that we can all respond to each other, and of course take Ishita's help as well.
Together, we'll plan it together.
Everyone together. And there might be people who are in a different state, and if their schools start earlier, then that would be really helpful.
Yes.
Things that have worked in that
session. Yes.
Sorry?
That we started and this is what's happening. So maybe
Exactly.
you'd like to think about,
Exactly.
Very good idea. Very good idea.
Yeah. And if you have friends in other states, please be in contact with them and find out. And Ishita did her homework. Let's do ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy weekend and stay safe, stay healthy, all of you.